personal invitation that got me to BCM. And then once I got there, they welcomed me. I mean, this 18-year-old that didn't really know all the current pop American culture stuff going on and all those
She
other
couldn't
things.
say the Pledge of Allegiance, y'all.
But they welcomed me in. They welcomed my differences. And it was there that I found a place of acceptance and through that personal invitation.
Yeah, so tonight, we just want to start with a quick question for you. When you hear this word hospitality, like if somebody says to you, you need to be hospitable, you need to practice hospitality, what do you think of? Shout it out.
Charity.
Charity, okay.
A meal.
Oh,
As
you
in the charity.
Oh, okay. Or you think of a person, okay. Hello, Charity.
Management major.
What'd you say?
Hospitality management major.
Hospitality, yeah, so this is a job, right? Being hospitable. You probably can lead us then, right? You know all about this. You're learning how it is. Well, what else? When you hear among Christians when they say be hospitable, what do you think about?
Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A, right? The most hospitable. My pleasure, right? I read the other day online that Chick-fil-A has the longest wait time for a drive-thru of any of the restaurants. But do we care? No, because they are nice to us and they get our order right? So we'll go there over and over again because they're hospitable. Macy's even repping for them tonight. Okay, what else do you think of? Hospitality. What'd you say? Food.
Like a meal together.
Yeah. So, and when if you look on your table, there's a handout for you, and on the second and third page, there's scriptures that we've given you. When you're covering a topic like this isn't a sermon. We're talking, we're training, we're learning together. And so it's not always easy to just kind of walk through one scripture. So here's a number of scriptures that are talking about that, and a ton of those here, but also throughout Scripture, when we see people being hospitable, it's around food, right? They're providing food for people, having people over at their house. You're probably really familiar, if you've been around BCM or church for any amount of time, the story of Mary and Martha being hospitable, and Mary being slack, and Martha getting mad at Mary for not helping her be hospitable, right? Yeah. So what else? What's another one or two things? Yeah.
Like Southern hospitality.
Okay. So Southern hospitality, y'all come on in and just sit down and get yourself a home. Yeah, Southern hospitality. Macy, and then you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think a sweet tea.
Sweet tea, yeah. So good stuff, yeah?
There's a book written by somebody that I got an email about it. What she does is she invites people to her kitchen table like all the time.
Yeah.
Like to the point of putting the kitchen table in her front yard and sitting out there for hours.
Yeah. So inviting people to a table. It's one of the reasons we set up tables tonight. We're trying to be careful with COVID, but there's just something special about sitting around a table with a group of people. It's very different. So tonight, again.
I think about how usually it's just women in the church who are told
Okay.
hospitable and not men, even though all these verses apply to everyone.
Yeah, so pretty much all these verses are written, all the verses are written by men. And men are supposed to lead the church, so hospitality is not just for ladies, right? Ladies, I think, we were talking about this today, I think ladies, there's an expectation for ladies to be the hospitable one in the family, make sure there's food and the house is ready, or things like that. But this is a call to all of us to be hospitable in every way. So on your handout, we did the old school teacher way of filling the blanks. And the reason we do this is because if you write something, you remember. This is scientifically proven. So we're going to kind of walk through this a little bit, but we want to start out with 3 words that we think will help us kind of walk through this very clearly. And the first word that you're going to see there is the word on number 1 is just hospitality. So let's just talk about for a minute what it means. I think we went through, even in this room, a lot of different kind of ideas about what hospitality is, a little bit about food, a little bit about, them being nice to us, that kind of thing. But here's a simple definition for hospitality, and it is when we treat outsiders like insiders. When we treat outsiders like insiders. All of us know this feeling, right? When you walk into a new classroom, new job, first time at BCM, church, that kind of, you got that weird vibe, right? Like, I'm new here. I don't know anybody. I don't know how the rules work. It's why a lot of churches quit introducing visitors, because it just wigged them out. I don't know if any of you were in churches when you were a kid, and they say, visitors, stand up, and we'd like to welcome you. Freaked people out, because we feel weird, right? We know that we're that we're new in a lot of different ways. It's also welcoming and including people who are not connected to us or connected to God. Okay, so we're not just hospitable, and the reason we would be willing to come and talk to you all about this, we're not just hospitable because it's cool or nice or kind. We're hospitable because it's the first step. It's opening the door to somebody finding the gospel, right? It is the difference in so many ways. There's so many people walking by and the door is closed to them because people who know Jesus and are connected to him don't open that door and say, hey, how's it going? You're walking by, come through the door. You're invited, you're welcome, you're here. So, hospitality, treating outsiders like insiders. Next word.
Okay, the next one we're going to kind of take a look at is strangers. So strangers are people who are disconnected from our God and our group. So people who are disconnected from our God or our group. So if you think about it, we interact with strangers daily. We pass them in the halls of your dorm or in your apartment complex. In classes, we sit beside them or one every other chair, however that's happening now. People that we interact with work, so they're everywhere. There's multiple opportunities to interact with strangers. And one thing I want us to think about tonight is, okay, so who all here has ever been invited to a fellowship? Okay? We do that really well typically. Fellowship at church, hey, we're going to have a fellowship, you all come. Fellowship at BCM, okay, we're going to hang out, we're going to fellowship. But hospitality is not fellowship, because fellowship tends to be when people within that community gather together and interact, encourage, share a meal, hang out, play a game, or
When the
whatever.
insiders hang out with each other.
Right, it's mostly insiders. So what we want to think about is that hospitality is actually involving loving the stranger and drawing that stranger, that outsider, into our community. So that's what, real hospitality is going out and interacting with those strangers and drawing those outsiders into our community, welcoming them. There are several scriptures in the Bible that talk about, strangers, but especially in Hebrews 13:2, it talks about, do not forget to show hospitality to strangers. For by doing, some people have also shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. So this is what you might want to think of. Your act of hospitality towards a stranger, that might be their first experience with someone that loves God and wants to show to them what the love of God is all about.
So the third word here quickly is just ambassador. So we want to have all three of these words in our head as we talk through some of the practical ideas in a minute. So ambassadors, if you look on your scripture pages, or just write this down quickly, 2 Corinthians 5:20. Therefore so if you're in this room and you're a believer, and I'm going to guess most of you are because you're showing up for discipleship, right? If you've been saved, if you're walking with the Lord, you're his ambassador. I'm his ambassador. It says, therefore we are ambassadors for Christ, as though God were making an appeal through us. We beg you on behalf of Christ, be reconciled to God. An ambassador. So ambassadors, what do ambassadors do? What are some things, we've seen these on TV, right? What's an ambassador for a country do? Yeah?
They represent them.
They represent them, right? So Jesus is telling us, hey Mac, you are my representative everywhere you go, on campus, at your job, in your apartment. You are my official person, right? Yeah. What else? What are some other things ambassadors do? Yeah, Macy. They lead, right? Ambassadors are like kind of regal, important people, right? Have you seen the show Madam Ambassador or Madam Secretary?
Yeah.
She's over all the ambassadors on that show. Ambassadors plan stuff, and ambassadors strategize. Ambassadors think through important things that need to be done. And Christ is calling every one of us to do that. Two other scriptures, write these down quickly. Acts 17:26 and 27. It's on your scripture pages as well. Acts 17:26 and 27 says something incredibly interesting. It says this. It says, God decided in advance when people would be born and where people would be born so that they might in some way find him. So that means the person who's a freshman, who's your roommate, or maybe you're a junior in who's your roommate. God decided when they'd be born and where they'd be born so that they would live with you as a believer so that they could be introduced to Jesus through you. He planned this stuff in advance. Ephesians 2:10, the other verse for this, Ephesians 2:10. For we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus. And He's prepared good works in advance for us to do. So, get the progression here. You're an ambassador, I'm an ambassador. God decided in advance who would be born and live with you, who you would interact with every moment of every day for your whole life. And He did that. He put them there so that they might run into you and run into me. And oh, by the way, He's made you and I His workmanship. So in other words, He's given us certain skills, gifts, and interests that would be appealing to people who are far from God, right? So whether you're in this room and you feel like, maybe there's somebody here who's like, yes, I'm very appealing to people, right? But most of us are just like, there's nothing special about me, you know, why would, but it's actually not about you, it's about God. And He's prepared your personality, He's prepared your interests, He's prepared all kinds of stuff so that you can connect with people because He's already planned out. He wants us to be able to invite those folks in to a relationship with Him as well. Okay, so we are His ambassadors. I have a question for y'all. Do you guys think, y'all know introvert and extrovert, right? I hear y'all talk about this all the time, right? I don't think that's in the Enneagram. We're not talking about the Enneagram, right? Introvert or extrovert? Do you guys think that Jesus was an introvert or an extrovert? You think he's an introvert? Okay. We got one introvert. How many of you think he's an introvert? Raise your hand. Okay, how many of you think he was an extrovert? I think it's probably the extroverts who think he was an extrovert and the introverts who think he was an introvert. Yeah. So there's some interesting scriptures. Luke 5:16-17 says this. It's talking about Jesus. It says, yet the good news about Jesus spread all the more, so that the crowds of people came to Him to hear Him and to be healed of their sicknesses. But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. I don't know about y'all, but that sounds like an introvert to me. Okay, this is my point. Whether you're in the room and you are a 40 out of 40 extrovert, like the two of us, we're extreme extroverts, God made us that way. It's difficult for me to be alone, right? I just like being around people, so I get my energy. Or you're in the room and you're like the opposite. You're like, it's actually kind of difficult for me to be around people. I mean, really, I get my energy by being alone. Jesus did the same thing. And Jesus asked us to walk like He walked. And Jesus had His times when He was alone, but there's also, right before this part of the verse, He had been with people on purpose to help them find salvation. So all of us, regardless of our personality, are called to be hospitable to people. So we've talked about what hospitality is, given a few words. We're just going to talk the rest of the time about some practical ways to be hospitable to people. And you'll see that there's 5 ways or 5 principles. The first principle, the first practical thing here, and you can add it in your fill in blanks, is as a believer and ambassador, you are always the host. You're always the host. What does that mean? So if you are an ambassador of God, and we've already decided that Scripture's true, and that's true, every room we walk into, we're His ambassadors. That means even if the first time I'm in a room, the first time I'm in a class, the first time I'm in a meeting, God sent me there as His ambassador. So I'm not the guest. As a believer, you're never a guest in a room. This is how guests behave. So guests in a room hang back and wait on somebody to invite them in, right? So if you're new, don't we all do this, right? The first time we show up at a new church, right, which is a terrifying experience. You go in and you're like, I don't know what they're doing. I'm just going to kind of wait right here. And then we get really mad after a while if nobody talks to us, right? And then half the time we sort of evaluate our experience at church, whether or not they came to us. Did they come to us? Yeah, that's not the right biblical attitude. The right biblical attitude for us is that we go to them. So when we walk in a room, even if we don't feel comfortable, our job from Jesus, our command, not suggestion, is that we go and we talk to people. Right? Okay, it will be awkward sometimes, but that is our command. So let's take that down to a really practical level for y'all. So that means when you walk into a classroom as Jesus' ambassador, our job is not to just sit down and try to make it and hope maybe somebody talks to us. Our job is to try to figure out how to talk to the person next to us. It's not always easy. In fact, a lot of times it's just downright not easy, right? Even for extroverts, like we've gotten ourselves in some super weird situations talking to new people, but that's still the right thing to do. So if you're working with a team, some of you have jobs where you're working and you're around a lot of people and you're just like, I just get through my job. That's my goal. I just make it. Yeah, I'm nice to people, I'm not rude to them, but I'm not going out of my way to get to know them. As a host, Jesus commands us to go out of our way to get to know the people around us because he's kind of sent us there as missionaries to that place. None of it is by accident. I kind of call this the don't be a Sheldon principle. See Big Bang Theory, right? So Sheldon walks into every room, right, like he owns everything, right? And like people are supposed to serve him. He waits on people to do what he wants, and we're called to do the opposite. Okay, next one.
Okay, so this next fill in the blank is really hard. You ready? It's be ready. So one of the first things that you can do before you even try to do anything with hospitality is just bathe it in prayer. Ask the Lord to help you. Ask the Lord to show you opportunities of people that are around you, that are strangers that you're not as familiar with, and to give you opportunities to interact. And then the second part of that is be ready when those opportunities come up. Don't miss them. Don't pass them by. Somebody walks by you, how about trying some eye contact and hello? Especially if it's in an environment where you're probably going to see this person, repeatedly. You see somebody maybe walking into their apartment or something and they're, struggling with bags. Offer to help carry a bag for them. Yeah, it might be a little weird, but you never know. They might take you up on it. And at least then they know that you are available, that you are approachable. So just make sure that people know that. The second part of this is if you know that you're going to be going into a group, whether as you walk in church on Sunday morning, as you come into BCM for something, get ready to have some questions already in your mind. Now, Chad would call these, make sure you don't have creeper questions.
Yeah.
Like, first question, where do you live?
Or
Okay.
exactly what apartment are you in?
Right, yeah.
No creeper questions,
We
right?
don't
We
wanna
want
start
some
with the
good,
creeper
normal questions for people.
Okay.
Like, hey, how's it going? I had a
Exactly.
good week.
Right.
What have you been up to?
If it's like one of the ones that Chad and I use all the time, if we see somebody at church and, they're visiting us, it's like, hey, how'd you hear about our church? And then that can just lead to open conversations. Also, know who people are around you that can help you keep that conversation going. So a lot of times we're somewhere, he's my teammate. I'll start with some questions, then I'll be like, hey, Chad, have you met so-and-so? And then I'll kind of back up and then let that conversation keep going.
We also do this when we don't know people's names, right? So one of the reasons we don't talk to people, let's just be honest and practical. One of the reasons we don't talk to people is we've seen them 4 times and they maybe told us their name once, and we don't remember their name, right? So let us teach you, this is completely not biblical, but it works. Let us teach you a quick way if you're together with somebody and you can't remember their name, but you really want to welcome them. So if Anna and I walk up and we don't know your name, but I've met you before, like I know that we've been introduced, and she's with me, I'm going to say, oh, hey, awesome, yeah, it's really good to see you. Have you met my wife, Anna?
And then I say, if he doesn't tell the name, because Chad usually knows the names, I'll be like, oh, hey, now what was your name again?
Right. She doesn't know I forgot her name, and I hear her name again. And you can do this with a buddy or a friend, help people. And it's just so people don't feel weird. And it's also so you don't feel weird because how many times do we not talk to people because we can't remember the name? Has there been anybody in here who doesn't like talk to somebody because you're like, they know my name, but I don't know their name?
I've done that.
We do it all the time, right?
Yeah.
It's just a practical thing.
Yeah.
So take a buddy with you, like say, this is my, be on the same page about that kind of thing.
Hey, wait. I have one more point.
Sure.
So the other thing too that we want to encourage you about, like, as Chad's already said, we love people in got both of our extroverted, people-loving kind of ways. So it's hard even on us sometimes. Just a couple weeks ago, I was at a young adult gathering. It was a small group of ladies. We had one person that was new to the group. The other young ladies in the group didn't really, these two knew each other, but those two knew each other, but those two didn't know those two. And y'all, I talked the whole night to the point that I irritated myself for asking questions, but I was trying to draw people out. And especially for that new person that didn't know a lot of the inside stuff, trying to draw her out. And it was hard. I came home and I told you, I was like, I am exhausted. So, but the great benefit of that evening was those girls got to know each other better. I got to know the girls better. There were so many things I didn't know about them. So great things come out of it.
Along the same line of those questions, so you always, when you walk into a room, you're going to walk into new rooms all the time. Have at least 3 questions that you're like, these are normal, natural questions for you. Some, and y'all may have heard me ask these to y'all tonight, right? As you came in, hey, how's it going? A lot of people want to know their name. I haven't met you yet. What's your name? And then going on to say, like, so where are you from? That's not where you live. That's 2 very different questions, right? That's not creeper. That's just, hey, where are you from? People love to talk about themselves. Not in an arrogant way, but it's a topic we know about, right? You're like, if they're going to ask me, something about politics or science, or I don't know if I know that, but I know where I grew up, and I know these things, and people will start talking. But you always want to have at least 3 questions, because sometimes if you just have 1 or 2, people won't get going with you at all. So the third thing, and this is my favorite one, third one here is embrace the awkward. Right? This is awkward. Like being on mission with Jesus and trying really hard to be hospitable, to talk to people and invite them in. It's awkward. You're going to end up with awkward conversations. You're going to end up with awkward nights out with friends. You're gonna have awkward. It's kind of like, sometimes I call this the first date principle, right? Right. First dates are, even if you are, who's the current cool couple? Who's the current cool
Stop
couple?
looking at me, Sam.
No, not at BCM. No, I'm talking about like in the culture. Like who's cool? Who's cool in the, yeah. Right. Even if you're cool, suave, smooth people, first dates are still awkward. But they're worth it. Because you either kind of figure out if you want a second date or if you don't want a second date. And this is kind of the same kind of principle with this. Embrace the awkward. So I have a friend who has this quote, and I really think that it's really worth it. There are lots of people who are one awkward conversation away from Jesus. In fact, there's tons of people around you. They're just one awkward conversation away from Jesus. You're going to feel weird about it. But man, get this. Is it worse to feel weird talking to people at first? Or is it worse for that person to not get connected to Jesus? Like, which one is worse, right? This is a point where we really just have to lay down our pride a bit and be okay being awkward, right? So some of those conversations will end poorly. People will just snub us. They'll be like, you're an idiot. They don't say it, but they'll look at you and go, you're an idiot. Like, leave me alone. People are like that. But other ones will be like her at the library or me in a parking lot. And just the fact that you were willing to talk to me set you apart in the culture. And I got interested in why you would act that way. Because it's not usual for people to act this way. And then I'm like, well, why are you different? And then I start going down the road, oh, you're different because you're part of that group. Oh, and that group learns about Jesus. Lots of people will follow you down the road to Jesus if you just take some of these very practical steps. So embrace the awkward and be ready for it. Have you, so I don't watch this show all the time, although it's my second reference. Have you seen Big Bang Theory? Right. So Penny, the girlfriend on Big Bang Theory, the normal person on Big Bang Theory, like just the average person that just has a job. Penny embraced the awkward of the whole group, right? Like Penny couldn't hang around there very long unless she embraced just the awkwardness of hanging out with all those guys. But because she did it, she found a lot of friendship and she found community. She was so very different than they were, but she embraced it in every way. Next thing.
Okay. The the next thing is invite a stranger. So let's talk about our space. I know that we, especially right now, in your generation, a lot of people tend to be really private, and that is okay. That is totally okay. I know that with COVID going on.
This is number 5, she's on there, we skipped number 4 back, so we'll keep going with number 5.
Do you want to go back for?
Yeah.
Okay.
So number 5 is share your space. And that's where she's on.
Share your space, yeah. So, invite a stranger. With COVID right now, we're kind of careful about how many are gathering and whether we invite them in our homes and all that. And that's okay, we understand that. But space can be beyond your actual, living, apartment, dorm, whatever that is. Space can be the space within your friend group. So perhaps maybe you want to make a pact among your friends, your close group of friends, that anytime you go out or go to do something or meet up to play, whatever game you're playing out on the field or whatever, you invite a stranger. You invite somebody you're not as familiar with for them to join that friend space with you. Because that's where you're going to be able to have conversations with them, get to know them, have those gospel conversations with them that are so important, and develop that friendship.
Can I add something to that?
Yes.
So, what we do a lot as Christians is we are friendly, right? So we will say hello to you, a lot of the time. We will say, hey, we're glad you're here, and then that's it. It's over. The next step, which is just as key, is not just, hey, how's it going? Glad you're here. It's, oh, by the way, we're all going to Krispy Kreme tonight afterwards, right? Or we're doing this, or we're doing that. Will you join us? Will you join us? And that, honestly, that is the line between somebody being an outsider and somebody being an insider. Hello is not the line. The line is, do you invite them in to do what an insider would do, right? And a lot of times, you think, you know what? We can selfishly think, I'm really happy with my little group the way it is. I'm busy, they're my friends, I understand them. I'm too stressed for awkward tonight, whatever it is. That's really selfish attitude, and we all have it. We just have to say, Jesus has called me to be more than that, so that people can find him.
So the next part is when you are ready to open that home.
This is 5, number 2.
Yes, 5-2. Open your apartment or home if you can, especially important for internationals. This is one thing that our family really does enjoy, having different people in your home. And especially with our internationals, we have a good friend that just left the other day to return home. And we are definitely going to miss him. But just that friendship that we were able to share around our table. Your house, your home, your apartment, your dorm doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to have the, latest gaming console, girls. Your house doesn't have to be decorated, apartment decorated, the latest urban farmhouse chick, kind of decoration. There's certain simple things you can do. I'm here to tell you need to clean. Just take a quick few minutes to pick up, clean. Make sure you have, a cup of coffee, even offering them water. Just make sure it's a comfortable place where they can come, know that they are welcome, and, host a game night with just a few people, or even being willing to have a Bible study. Chad and I used to live in Virginia, and their houses were extremely expensive, so we lived in a small 2-bedroom townhome for all 3 of us.
Like where Harry Potter grew up, under the stairs, tiny.
Our living room, our dining room were all one, and it stared into the kitchen, But we got asked to host a small group for our church of younger people, and we were like, yeah, I don't think we can do that. But we prayed about it because we felt like the Lord was present. Long story short, we wound up having 26 adults and 9 kids in that space. People were everywhere, but man,
They didn't care. They were
care.
excited to be together.
We had new people come from out, coming into our group, and we got to get in some really deep conversations about God, and we saw some real life changes happening in that. So that was God showing us how he could work even in a small town home, in a small space that we thought, yeah, this is impossible. And really the last point on that, number 3 there, is share your third space. So basically there's this concept that we have, a third space. So you have your home space, you have your school or work space, and then you have your third spaces, which are like coffee shops or the gym or, other places where you are at church. So use those spaces to also be hospitable and invite people in to your group.
And this helps during COVID, right? When you're like, I really do have a 12 square foot apartment, and a lot of people here's not gonna work. It's fine. Find your third space. Share your third space with people.
Right. After church, if you see somebody new or somebody you don't know that well, hey, we're gonna grab some lunch and head to the park. You wanna meet us there? It's something just really simple. If somebody new in your workout class at gym, just actually say hello. Hey, how's it going? You're gonna be spending all this time in the same class with them anyway. So things like that. Curbside pickup. PetSmart and Target people have really got to know our people, our family during COVID. And Chad was just really talking to the lady at Target the other night. Like I know you, I remember you. Like, try to, go to the same hairstylists, build those relationships in your third spaces.
Okay, so back to number 4, and we'll finish up here. Number 4, this really is just make a plan. Okay, so if we think that we're just gonna all of a sudden just stumble into being super hospitable, that's just not really true. Even back to that story with Mary and Martha. Martha prepared all day for Jesus. So in a sense, we have to prepare our heads and our hearts and even our life and schedule a lot to do well. So just some practical things that you can do to have a plan. Number 1, under 4, follow up with everybody you meet. If you meet a new person at BCM, follow up with them. Follow up with them, some of you come in, there may be some extreme extroverts in the room, and you're like, oh no, I meet everybody at BCM. I talk to 20 people, or I talk to all the people when I go into the gym. Well, make a plan for how you can follow up. And the second one goes with it, and it's get their info. Like, this is simple. So I'm talking to you for more than a couple of minutes, and be like, hey, I'd love to hang out with you sometime, or, some friends and I always study at the coffee shop, whatever it is, can I get your number, right? And people, if they don't share it, they don't share it. But if you don't ask, the answer is definitely no. And then they might share it, and you might be able to follow up with them. The next one, number 3, if you do that, contact people within 3 days. Okay, so this is back to dating. So, if you go on a date with somebody and they don't call you back for a long time, even guys and girls are both like, this is not good, right? This is not good. So take that on a smaller version for somebody that you meet, right? That you met. You're like, hey, we do this. If you don't contact them within a few days and invite them to something, they kind of forget. They think you've forgotten. They think they're not really important to you. But if you text somebody in 3 days after you met them, after you said, hey, we're going to invite you, and you do that, they're going to think, hey, they meant it. They want me to be a part of what they're doing. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to come with you. If their schedule allows, they're going to show up and help you. The next one there, number 4, is pick a night or time for hospitality. To be honest with you, I have a job, a full-time job, and I don't make a ton of money. But I have less time than I have money. So time is the thing that all of us are actually more selfish about than our resources, right? Think about it. Honestly, you're like, I want to do what I want to do. I want to go back to my place and watch Netflix. I've had a long day. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want my time. So a sacrifice to be ambassador for Jesus is say, there's going to be one time in my week, every week, 1 2-hour block, 3-hour block, one night, one Saturday morning, when I'm going to say, this is part of having a plan. Let me think. Every Saturday morning for 3 hours, I'm going to this coffee shop. And everybody I meet this week who's a stranger to me or to God, I'm going to invite them to join me at the coffee shop. Some Saturdays I'm going to sit there alone, and that's fine. I can study or read my Bible. Other Saturdays, people are going to show up, and I'm going to be able to get to know them. But you got to kind of know that you're doing that when you meet somebody, or you go through this whole 12-day process of figuring out when you can meet up with somebody. So just have a plan. Pick a night, pick a time. And then this is number 5. Last thing here. How many of you in here are in some kind of like smaller Bible study or accountability group with other people? Okay. So add hospitality to as something that you let other people hold you accountable for. Right? So a lot of times our accountability groups, kind of going back to what I said at the beginning, are about making sure we don't do the bad stuff or making sure that we're reading our Bible. And those are all legitimate. But Jesus spends way more time telling us what we should do than those other 2 topics. He's telling us how to be on mission. And so give your accountability group permission to ask you, have you been hospitable this week? What strangers have you connected with this week? Who have you invited to things this week? Holiness is not only about what we don't do. It's more so about what we do and why we do it on purpose for the gospel. So just the last thing here, because we're running out of time, we just wanted to give you guys a challenge related to just not being selfish about things. So, we all have this kind of tendency to be selfish, right? And honestly, at the end of the day, even for extroverts, who it doesn't freak us out as bad as it used to go up with people. Even for us, I have a long day, I have a stressful week, I have a stressful month, and I'm just not going to reach out to new people, right? It's a decision that I say, Jesus told me to do this. It's not a suggestion from him. As you read through all those scriptures, and I encourage you to take those 2 pages of scriptures we gave you. In fact, there's one in there in Matthew that's terrifying to read. About not doing, I got all their attention with that, right? Eat some zombie Skittles and read that at the same time and blow your mind. So it's a command. This isn't a suggestion from God to be hospitable to people. So when you're having those stressful weeks, those stressful months or whatever, you just have to say whether I feel like it or not, I'm going to do what Jesus asked me to do. So that, not so I can look holy, not so that I can feel good about myself, so that somebody who literally is walking on a path away from God, that's taking them to an eternity without God, so that maybe start walking this way. Go past me this way toward hell.
We didn't rehearse
We
this.
never rehearse this. This is you. Hey, how's it going?
Hey.
That person stops. Hey, you want to go with me to a coffee shop?
Make it a little less
Not creepy. Hey, how's it going? Sure. Okay, they're walking this way now. Right? It's literally kind of like doing that when we're not selfish with our time. So our challenge to you, and this is a challenge for us, because we certainly struggle with this as well, is don't be selfish with your time. So think about this week, one way that you know you're selfish with your time, and share it with your accountability group, if you're in accountability, and ask them to help you not be so selfish with your time, and help you out to get to know people. It was good hanging out with y'all. I think we're right on the dot for time. Jamie's going to come up. We'll be around afterwards, and we'd love to talk with you guys some more, and it was good hanging out with you tonight.
Y'all, that was very, very valuable. Don't you think? Don't you think? All right, so you shake your head. Let me ask this question. What do you think, what's one thing? There's a lot that they shared. I was taking notes the whole time. And so I'm still learning. I'm still being discipled, right? What's one thing out of all the things that you learned, that you heard tonight, what's one thing that you think will probably stick with you for a little while after this? Hannah?
Making time, scheduling time in advance for hospitality, because I know there are people that I've been meaning to eat with, and I'm hanging out with people less because fewer people are here and I'm not running into people as often. But the way my schedule works this semester, I actually do have more time that I can connect with people, and I don't schedule it, and I tend to just do homework during that or whatever, when I could definitely schedule, okay, these 2 hours. And that also makes me a lot less stressed, because then if I see someone and I'm like, oh, we need to go do this, and I'm stressed, I'm like, oh, now I gotta carve out this time that I was planning to do this. But if I've already set aside that time for others, then it's not a burden.
Yeah, I actually wrote that down too. You remember 2 weeks ago, we talked about, turning every conversation into gospel conversations. And we talked about, remember I said, what's it going to take for us to share the gospel? We have to be intentional. I just wrote down be intentional. Yeah, that I need to be intentional in setting aside time. That's good. I'm probably gonna take away the same thing. She ran up. Macy.
I like the partner idea where you like bring someone to ask the person's name. I forget.
Yeah. Tasha and I do this. We do this. We do basically the same thing. I don't say, this is my wife, Tasha. Tasha just knows that if I'm in a conversation and she's there, if I don't introduce her, she knows that I don't know their name. And so she automatically says, hey, I'm Tasha, Jamie's wife. And she knows that's the cue. And the awkward thing is when they don't say what their name is back. And I'm like, oh, well, I appreciate it. Way to go, And so, yeah, that's good. That's good. What? Somebody else? Evan, what are you going to take away? I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm gonna get awkward and put you on the spot.
Okay. Well, speaking of awkward, I need to not be afraid to have awkward conversations with people because I tend to not do it because almost every time I just try to initiate a conversation with a stranger, I am not personable, so I get turned away and get weird looks. But I need to be not afraid to do that because of what I learned tonight and because remembering the few times where it has said something made me sure I did.
Hey, I love Chad's story. Actually, it's very challenging to me here as a BCM director. And I want you guys to, I want to just remind you of what his story was. A BCM group was passing out Coke bottles or cans of Coke and just said, hey, we're here to tell you Jesus loves you. I mean, how easy is that? And so it really is there are some simple things that we can do. Hey, back table over here. What's one thing, just one person maybe, what's one thing you're going to take away?
Embrace the awkward.
Yeah, embrace the awkward.
I struggle with social anxiety, so when it's really difficult for me, it's become very awkward, because I get very anxious by another person.
Hey, the good news is, Lena, right, Jesus uses extroverts and introverts. Right, all of us are called to be hospitable. And so even all of us pushing through, whether you are, whether it's just not your deal or your personality, just pushing through and being willing to be awkward for Jesus' sake and for the gospel's sake, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let me ask this question. What was the most challenging thing to you tonight? What was the most challenging thing you heard, Sierra?
Remembering to keep our friend groups open consistently. Sometimes we're like, it's just my one or two close friends, if we're good, but always making sure that door is consistently open for new people.
Hey, when they said that, I was like, yeah. Because this is the whole part of our discipleship team process, right? That our discipleship teams are designed and you guys were organized for this fact that you wouldn't just get together with, in church circles we say it's us four, no more. And that's a dangerous thing. And so what we're asking, right, our BCM to do is to get together in discipleship teams and to not let it be that way. To be intentional, to say, hey, we're going to actually set aside time. This is like Thursday nights at 7 o'clock are going to be our time to get together, to just hang out. Or we're going to go to the coffee shop and holding each other accountable to say, who are you going to bring this week? Who are you going to invite this week? Or who did you invite this week? Even those kind of things, that's so important. So that's a good challenge. What else? Somebody else. What were you challenged by, Brianna?
It's not a challenge per se, but just wanted to say that eye contact is very cultural. If you stare down like a Japanese person, they're going to think that you're disrespectful. Or an autistic person, they're going to start being really anxious and scared.
That's good.
So you have to adapt your hospitality and what it looks like to the other person.
Of even being a good, part of even hospitality is being a good student of people, right? And understanding the different things that people struggle with and just being aware and being able to pick up on that quickly. And, for instance, especially for the female students, if you get involved or you start talking to a Muslim student here on campus, if it's a man, he's definitely not going to want you to look him in the eye. And just being aware of that, and not going, well, we're in America, man. You're in America, dude. You got to get over it. No, remember, we're always the hospitable ones, and that's what God has called us to do.
Can I say one thing on that? Just so the introvert-extrovert thing. Extroverts like me freak introverts out. right? Because it's like, man, why are you asking me all those questions, right? Everybody is needed, both introvert and extrovert, because some of you, as an introvert, or maybe you're here, you're like, I'm an awkward person. You will be able to relate to people that an extrovert will not be able to relate to. And there will be people that you're like, I can't even have a conversation with them, that an extrovert person could have a conversation. That's why we're the body of Christ and we're all made differently, but just back to those verses, He created you in advance the way you are to help people find Him. So don't be down on yourself if you're an extrovert or an introvert or an awkward either version, right? He made you that way because He's got a plan, and be okay with that and just sort of embrace it. Embrace the awkward if you're the awkward, right?
Yeah, that's good.
As an awkward person, I want to say that.
Somebody else, Hannah, what's a challenge to you tonight?
So I feel like my home is my safe space, and I don't like other people to be in it if they don't already live there or they're not Alex. Or like there are just certain circumstances where it's fine, but then if it keeps me from inviting other people. If I am expected to entertain the person that's in my home and I know that person, I get really anxious. I'm like, but this is my space. This is where I get to just let go, and I have to have that third space all the time so that I can interact with people, because I don't like to interact with people in my home. But I do know that there are times where some people really like to be in people's homes and they like that personal feel, and that's something that challenges me.
Hey, Hannah, you know what we do, even with Tasha and I, both of us are extroverts, just like Chad and Anna. And even as an extrovert, sometimes I do worry about carrying on that, making them feel welcome and asking questions and engaging. Sometimes it wears you out. Like with the ladies you were talking about earlier. So sometimes it's good to even bring other people in that you know can help you with that. And that way you don't feel the pressure of saying, I've got them in my home, I've got to make sure they feel entertained the whole time.
That's what we did for the 2 semesters that Katie and I lived together. When we had family groups like that, that was hard for me to have basically all of women's ministry in our apartment, because I'm like, but this is, I can't relax right now. And so I didn't have to take the entire burden of hospitality because Katie was also there, and she's way better at it than me. So we could always balance each other out.
Hey, and I think this is a good teaching time even for what you just said. One thing you just said, and I know our time is up, so I'm going to dismiss this too. But I would say, so hosting Bible studies in our homes. It's always, because my home is my safe, it is the one place where I'm I get to just be Jamie tonight. And so when it comes to even hosting Bible studies in your apartment, in your dorm room, in your home, whatever that might be, it's always sometimes better to have somebody else lead the Bible study outside of their home, or have somebody else lead it in your home, and you not have to actually be the one to lead that there. And to already with that one person just know, hey, at a certain point I'm going to give you a look, or maybe at a certain time, if you would just maybe get up and leave and go home. And usually whoever the leader is, if they're not in their own home, when you're hosting it in your own home and you're the leader, you can't do this unless you already have a prearranged person that you know is gonna come and say, hey, if I say this, or if I at a certain time, if you would get up and leave, then sometimes whoever the leader is, if they leave, everybody else will just say, well, it's time for me. We're overstaying our welcome now. It's time to go. And so sometimes it is kind of awkward because you're thinking, man, I've got 2 hours, but they're ready to stay for 5. What am I going to do? And so sometimes that can be awkward. So, y'all, this was valuable. And Chad and Anna, thank you guys. Thank you guys so much. Hey, I'm gonna try to do my best to get this put up on our YouTube page as soon as possible. And so you guys can get on there, you can share this. I'm gonna actually share this on my Facebook page too, because I think there are a lot of folks that need to hear and learn from this. And so, hey, good to see you guys. There is some pizza left. So if you're still hungry, or even if you're not hungry, right, you're just a college student who just always eats. And please, it's all of Tasha's favorite is gone. So there's nothing else that she would want me to bring home. And so please, go grab another slice. Hey, Sam, would you close us in prayer tonight?
Sure will. Dear God, thank you for this wonderful time we've had. Just spend time together, enjoy a meal together. More importantly, to learn about how to serve you and serve your people best. And so God, I pray as we go out, that we're loving and hospitable to everyone we meet, and fulfill Lord, what your word requires for us to do for those around us. In your name I pray. Amen.
Can I have a twister?
So please take the candy and take the toys if you want the toys. Especially